Now from KWWL, this is the Steel Report.
And welcome to this week's edition of the Steel Report. I have three guests here today to talk about really what I consider to be one of the most important nonprofit events of the entire year. And this year it's going to be the 5th annual Mental Health Awareness Breakfast, sponsored by Unity Point. Of course, it is a fundraiser for Hawk-Grundy Mental Health Center, and we'll be talking about that here in just a moment. Right now, though, let's meet our guests here to talk about this great event coming up on Friday, May 10th, as always at the Bienvenue Event Center in Cedar Falls. So please welcome back to the program. This is Tom Ekas. He is the Executive Director of the Hawk-Grundy Mental Health Center. So Tom, always great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Ron.
And also welcome back to the program. This is Susan Rollinger, and Susan's a co-chair of the event and also the MC for the event.
Yes, I am. I'll be MC this year too.
That's fantastic. And also, she's a former keynote speaker, so she has an incredible story. We'll hear more about that here a little bit as well. And welcome this year's keynote speaker. This is Joanna Ranavardi, the curriculum chair over at East High School and also the department head for the East High Health and Physical Education departments. And Joanna will hear more about your story as well, because it's just incredible. And I know people will be wanting to know about what happened to your son, Zach.
Yep, thank you for having me.
So all three of you, welcome to the program. Incredible stories that we always hear at this Mental Health Awareness Breakfast. Tom, it's an important fundraiser. It's also one of the most attended events of the year, too. So that says something about the importance of this event, doesn't it?
Absolutely, Ron. You know, the Mental Health Center's been in business 73 years. And as much as we've been a presence in the community during that time, the Mental Health Awareness Breakfast that we started 5 years ago has elevated the conversation about mental health to heights that I don't think anybody could have realized years ago.
And we learned that with Tony Thompson's new book that just came out here recently about that convergence between law enforcement and mental health situations. And Tony's been talking about that, and we had him on the program. Joanna, your story is a very sad and tragic one. Why don't you, without giving away your entire speech, tell us a little bit about what happened to your son and how that has influenced your life here in the last years.
My oldest son, Zach, we lost him to suicide 5 years ago. He had just graduated from UNI, had a full-time job. He had been an athlete his entire life, and he portrayed a person who was completely put together and everything was fine, and he put everybody else first, and was using alcohol to kind of self-medicate. And one night, in an irrational decision, we lost him to suicide, and I found him the next morning, and have had to pull my life together and be the strong one for the family. And then 2 years ago, I lost my husband. And he was my rock. And so now it's just Kale and I, and so I'm going to tell about our story and kind of how we have managed to put the pieces together, but also really stress the importance of mental health and athletics and why it really is okay to ask for help.
And your son Kale is actually the one that came down and said something's wrong?
Yeah, Zach and I, the boys and I were going to a color run that morning, and I had sent Zach Kale into Zach's room to wake his brother up, and he came out and he goes, "Mom, there's something wrong with Zach." And I went in and found him and rolled him over in my lap. And
well, I'll be honest with you, I can't even imagine having to go through that. So
yeah, it's been a journey.
A journey, yeah. And Susan, your situation is similar in that you also found the body of your brother, a well-known individual here in town, Matt Rollinger, and tell us a little bit about that, because that's also a very heartbreaking story where we all love Matt and we didn't know kind of the struggle he was going through. Yeah.
Right, similar, very similar story. Matthew could hide it, and he hid it for years, and Matthew also was one who was self-medicating his anxiety and mental illness and struggles. Unfortunately, his form of self-medication was methamphetamine. And so that led to a very tragic end to his story. And I was the one who found him. So it's a, and I know that Joanna and I have talked about this. There are times when we believe that we find them and it in many ways it's the right thing. It's the right way for it to proceed, but then it just puts a challenging path in front of us, and there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot for us to talk about and share at the Mental Health Awareness Breakfast.
Yeah. This was in June of 2021. At the time, did you think Matt was doing okay? Because you had talked to him, I remember, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, we really did believe he was okay. He, the weekend prior, he had gone all the way down to St. Louis for my oldest daughter's wedding, and we had spent the weekend together. And then the weekend immediately previous to when I found him, he was going to come either go visit my sister or come to see me, and neither one of us saw him. So we were kind of communicating, couldn't get a hold of him. And then at the time I was living in Des Moines, I came up into Waterloo for work, and just thought I'd do a quick drop in to see him, and that's not what it turned out to be. So.
Yeah, that's very tragic, very heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Joanna, I wanted to ask you, you knew probably that maybe he was drinking a little bit. Did you have any idea it had gone that far, or were there any warning signs at all that you now look back on?
There were lots of them, and my husband Ali and I cannot stress this enough, is we weren't looking for them. I mean, I know the signs of suicide. I'm a counselor. I, look for it in my own kids. I teach other people how to do it. But Zach made very sure that no one saw the whole picture. So, we may have, I may have sat with him at time, a time or two when he was completely at, rock bottom and drunk, and the world is horrible and I'm worthless, and, normally it would be you put him to bed, you sat with him for a while, and then, the next morning we were fine. He was apologetic, and, life would move on. And, we knew he was drinking and had really encouraged him to cut down. A lot of his friends had said, hey, you got to cut back on your drinking, and let's find things to do that don't involve alcohol. And I was encouraging him to, look for mental health services, like, let me get you a counselor, let me, get you in for some help. And he's like, no, I'm fine. And, he portrayed outwardly, looking at him, you would not know that he was depressed and anxious. And, his biggest thing for him was change. He could not handle change. And one of the biggest life changes for him up to that point, he graduated from college. He was living at home, but that's what he needed to do. So my husband and I were not in any hurry to say, hey, you got to move out. It's what he needed, and so it's what we were going to give him. And he was struggling with that, and so it was, there were probably signs there. And looking back, oh yeah, and we really found that out in the days and weeks that followed. We processed with a lot of his friends. They spent a lot of time at the house, and all of us talking and working through our grief process, and everybody saw a little piece. So Zach would say, you saw a piece, you saw a piece, you saw a piece, I saw a piece, but Zach made sure that nobody ever saw the whole picture.
Tom, that what you just said, no one sees the whole picture, that's a familiar story that you see probably on a daily basis, right?
It's all too common, Ron. As Joanna said, people see pieces, they see various signs and symptoms, but unless they're talking to other people, unless they're reaching out, unless they're trying to put that puzzle together, which is a real good analogy, it goes undetected. And suicide is still a national epidemic right now, Ron, despite all the information that we have out there that is help available.
2, 1, go get 'em. Have a great run, walk.
Yeah, I've done a lot of work in the last couple of years with Alive and Running, had them on the program to get their situation out there with the work that they do. A breakfast like this, what can you do to reach people with these kinds of stories? I mean, it's one thing just to get them there, but it's more important to have them be there and react to these stories and do something even in their own lives or to help someone else.
I think the biggest thing, Ron, is awareness. Right now, 60% of people that need mental health services in the United States are not getting those services, primarily because of the stigma. So even though we know that help is available and treatment works, there's still a great deal of stigma. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to let anybody know how I'm doing. We just need to continue to reach out. part of what we're doing, and we established it in 2014 actually. We have a coalition of suicide prevention and support in the county. About 125 people on my listserv. I'm always looking for more. Wow. That we do a lot of public education, QPR, assist training. Our next focus is going to be on trying to work with gun dealers to help them identify some of the warning signs that people may be thinking about it. We've got hundreds of gun locks that I'm willing to give away to anybody, because if people can have even what they found is a 3-minute interval between the time they make that decision and what did I do with the key to this darn gun lock, you've changed somebody's perspective on things.
And don't you even have a campaign within Black Hawk-Grundy Mental Health, something like It's Okay? Is that,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that. Yeah.
Well, the National Alliance of Mentally Ill on Mental Illness and Mental Health America always comes out with a mental health, May is Mental Health Month, which is why the breakfast. But there are all kinds of, there's a toolkit that's put together from public proclamations to things that we can do. We're already in every Waterloo and Cedar Falls schools. And if you remember, for 50% of all lifetime cases of mental illness developed by the age of 14, 75% by the age of 25. So we've got multiple opportunities to intervene, especially with the young kids.
And you said the QPR question?
Persuade, refer. You
right.
don't have to be a mental health professional to get somebody to treatment.
Yeah, and Ryan Nesbitt over at Alive and Running, Troy Belmer, they do such a great job. Amanda Anderson on their board. We've had them on the show before to talk about some of these warning signs and things like that. We're going to talk more about what's happening with the lives of the 3 people here on our set here today, and also the Mental Health Breakfast on May 10th. But we need to take a break right now. We'll come back in just a moment. And welcome back to this week's edition of the Steele Report, talking about a great event coming up to support the Black Hawk-Grundy Mental Health Center, and that is the annual Mental Health Awareness Breakfast. You see it on your screen there, the graphic. It's May 10th. That's a Friday morning, 7 to 9 at the BN Venue Event Center in Cedar Falls. And co-chair and MC, Susan Rollinger, this year you're kind of focusing a little bit on, because we talked in the first segment, we know Zach was an athlete, his brother is an athlete. Why athletes this year?
You know, Ron, it's a great question. And University of Northern Iowa coaches, Ben Jacobson in particular, has been a huge supporter of our Mental Health Awareness Breakfast.
Sure has, yeah.
And we've continued to talk about what this does mean for athletes and for coaches. And, you know, I come from a family of athletes, you know, and my dad, my grandpa, my siblings, myself, we all struggled with the stress that you experience as an athlete. And you know, we talk about how when there's an injury, if you're injured in practice or in competition, you immediately get tended to, and you openly share that. You get to the trainer, you get that taken care of. But if the hurt is happening in your mind, a lot of athletes, one, aren't sure where to go with that, and also aren't necessarily comfortable talking about it, and feel like that is some form of weakness. And so we really want to talk about that. Also, Tom mentioned that mental illness, the first signs of mental illness occur at young ages. Those are also the ages where these kids are getting into their AAU leagues and their competitive athletics. And if it's a child that's already got some symptoms of anxiety or prone to some struggles with their mental health, putting them into that kind of a situation and sending them out there without a connection to helping professionals is, you know, it's something we'd like to avoid, to kind of take care of. So we want to bring awareness to that.
Yeah, I've had on my program last year with Patrick McCaffrey, of course, he was kind enough to talk publicly about the anxiety that he had gone through, even as a star player at the University of Iowa. Your kids were athletes. Zach was an athlete.
Yep,
Kayla,
my husband was an athlete. Yeah. My father-in-law was an Olympic athlete. My grandfather was an athlete, and so my husband kind of told the boys, you don't have a choice. Like, you're going to wrestle, whatever else you do. You may never win a match, I don't care, but this is one sport you're going to do. And the boys just kind of found a natural, you know, glitch there that now don't get me wrong, Zach had a hard time walking and chewing gum at the same time. He was, but once he kind of found his stride, he was a big boy, and football was kind of his groove, and found his home as a center, and it just kind of went right along with his very protective nature. And I'm gonna I'm the one in charge here, and my job is to protect the people behind me, and he did that job beautifully, and he was very proud of it. But yeah, athletes it's just been a part of our life. In fact, our youngest son attended his first sporting event. He'd been home from the hospital for 2 hours. So he's never known anything else until he was 5. In fact, his favorite song was the national anthem because he heard it more than anything else. So it kind of gives you an idea of athletes. Athletics has always been a part of our life and just the culture of our life. But and my husband was a coach, and it was also, but he also showed as a coach to his athletes that it's family. We're family. And he would spend time talking to his athletes and getting to know his athletes, and he showed his kids and our children that, you know, it's okay to ask for help or to not be okay or to, you know, to be vulnerable. But that was the culture in our family and him as a coach, and I know that not all kids get that.
And you know, Joanna, beyond being agreeing to be our keynote speaker, has offered we have an additional perk this year. We're going to be gathering athletes, coaches, athletic directors from the area the night before our mental health breakfast to have a process together. So it's been wonderful that she's been willing to kind of coordinate all of that and get it together. So I have an opportunity for kids that can't come join the breakfast, but will be able to tap into a lot of what we want to share.
That Thursday night event, Ron, is we have former VIP athletes from the Cedar Valley coming to tell the kids that we hope are there that it's okay to talk about this stuff. So we've got Kyvan Gatson. We've got some other well-known athletes that people will know.
Is this going to be open to the public also, or not?
I think you'll probably have some stragglers come in. It's primarily for athletes and coaches.
And where is that going to take place?
It's going to take place over at the Career Center at Waterloo.
Okay. Well, that's fantastic, because this is not just reserved for athletes. So you see this on a daily basis. People fight that. I just don't want anybody to know that I'm struggling, that type of thing. How do you deal with that? I mean, how do you break that ice to say, okay, it is all right to admit that, you know, what, I'm struggling, I need some help?
You know, it's friends and family that are going to have those pieces that Joanna and Susan both eloquently talked about, and I think it's staying with people that are struggling, telling them it's okay. There's, you know, last year they rolled out the 988 National Suicide Crisis
And
talk.
it's been busy.
It's been very busy. 7 million calls the first year, and it was in existence. You can text, you can talk, you can email people. And it's one step before you perhaps get to somebody like me to deal with those issues and problems.
Joanna, what kind of toll has this taken on you? You have a service dog with you here today. Can you tell me a little bit about why that service dog is a part of your life? What have you been through the last 5 years?
Well, I lost Zach, and Ali my husband was a huge support. We made a very strong commitment to each other from day one that we were not going to let this destroy our marriage or our family. That we were gonna, you know, marriage is for better or worse, and this is definitely worse, and so we're gonna, you know, lean on each other. And he was my rock, and you know, he always said I was his, but he always had my back. So, and when he got sick and passed away very, very unexpectedly, my kids actually, Kale and Zach's best friend, actually said, it was right before Allie's funeral, they're like, when are you getting a puppy? I go, I'm not. They're like, yeah, you are. I'm like, no, I'm really not. And about 3 weeks later, Cassie sent me a baby picture of Mocha and said, well, you like her, don't you? She's really cute. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, well, I'm getting your sister, so you're getting her. So I was like, well, okay. So, you know.
And what has that meant to you?
It has meant a tremendous amount. The kicker was, Mocha was actually born the day my husband passed away.
Oh, wow.
So it was just kind of one of those signs that it was meant to be. But I did say that if I'm getting a puppy, then we're going to get her trained and have her be a service dog. And through the process, it just helped me heal, having something else to focus on. And, you know, having a puppy is kind of like having a baby. You know, they make you get out of bed and they don't let you just, you know, sleep, and they need attention. And so through that whole process, I was able to have a purpose. and kind of find my way again. And you know, Kayla and I constantly call it our new normal. And so she's been through her training, just kind of figured out what she was good at, and then worked with my counselor to help with what I needed, so that then I can use the tools that I have to make it through my depression. And
well, that's really something. We've had Trent Dirks on and his dog, his service dog, with Retrieving Freedom, you know, and of course they work mainly with veterans going through PTSD. But is that the same kind of thing for you?
Yeah, it is. She helps, you know, with the anxiety, the depression, mostly the depression, or when my emotions get so overwhelmed and I can't. And some of it is still the PTSD. I mean, there's still times when guns and gun violence will stop me in my tracks. And she's does remarkable. The kids at school know when I'm struggling on a day, because she doesn't leave my side. And you know, right now she knows I'm pretty good because she's passed out on the floor back here behind me. But yeah, she knows when she's working and what her job is, and she does it very well.
And Tom, you just mentioned that the timing of all this is pretty remarkable too. What is the CNN report you saw?
CNN just came out a report yesterday. I just sent it to Susan and Joanna. The NCAA just did a study. The second leading cause of death in college athletes is suicide right now. It's jumped up from 7% to 15%. So the thing these guys are talking about, the stress associated with it, and that starts in high school. And they even talk about the new NIL and the social media pressure on some of these college athletes is just immense. And if they have injuries and chronic pain. So they're talking, the NCAA just came out with a revised version. It's called Mental Health Best Practices, Understanding and Supporting Student Athlete Mental Health. It's a huge comprehensive manual that every college and university needs to pay attention to.
Wow. And Joanna, you were talking about the kind of the factor of you're looking up to these great athletes. Expand on that a little bit.
We've all talked about, you know, how do we change things and how do we get younger kids to get help? And athletes, I mean, you know, there's the professional athletes that we all watch, and there's, you know, the ones we go see, you and I, or go down to Iowa and watch, or Iowa State, or that are from the community that we live in. And by knowing that they ask for help and that they support mental health, sometimes it's that, wow, somebody else looks up to it, so maybe I can too. So hopefully just changing that paradigm of it's other people ask for it, it's really okay to ask for help.
Exactly. Susan, what have you learned since Matthew's passing about mental health?
Oh, I've learned a lot.
I mean, I know we don't have hours, but
it's remarkable, Ron, because you know my master's degree was in counseling. I worked in behavioral health, but once you become the family member of someone who is challenged, then you learn so much more. There's so much more to it than what we learn in the classes, and grief is a big part of it too. We're going to be touching on that at the Mental Health Breakfast too. It's not just the focus on the athletes and their wellness. It's also, we're going to be touching on the experience of grief and how we find a way to move forward in a healthy way.
Okay, and Tom, real quickly, all your services are totally confidential, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you come to Tom and the counselors there at Black Hawk-Grundy Mental Health Center, that's all going to be as private as humanly possible.
Absolutely.
And what is the focus specifically this year for your fundraising?
So this year, Ron, we've decided to focus some of the funds we raised on purchasing a new van. We transport hundreds of clients every month to appointments out in the community, to the mental health center. Despite the transportation system we've got in town, there's always additional needs. So if we can't get people to come to the office, we're going to go out and get them and bring them in. So we're going to purchase a new van with the funds we raised this year.
So again, the Mental Health Breakfast on Friday, May 10th at a BN venue. The tickets are on sale right now. It probably will be a sellout. It usually is. That's what we want. We want people to take something away from this that they can take into their own lives and help other people as well. So we'll wrap things up here on the Steel Report in just a moment. And welcome back as we wrap up another edition of the Steel Report. Be sure to check out all of our previous shows on kwwo.com. And don't forget the Mental Health Awareness Breakfast coming up on Friday, May 10th at the BN venue in Cedar Falls. That's it for this week. As always, thanks for watching.